forums. Please feel free to email us about both the content of this forum and any other content that you'd like to see in future forums as well. This standard slide, most of you would be familiar with this one. So competition law, it's not the AEMO competition law, it's the Competition and Consumer Act 2010. The idea essentially that people not engage in behaviour that could be anti-competitive. So in terms of the do's and do nots, discussions ideally are kept to those matters that are on the agenda for today's session. Everybody is required to make their own decisions about their approach to engagement in the session. And if you see something, say something in terms of potential breaches of the Act or anti-competitive behaviour, much of which will relate to the disclosure of commercially confidential information. So on the right hand of the slide, things to avoid discussing confidential information such as who you're supplying to, the price at which you're supplying it, bids, tenders, strategies, and of course, any sort of collusive trading behaviour. All right, next slide. And today's agenda, first I'll be handing over to Nitika Pani for an update on the RCM process and where we're at right now with CRC. Then over to Nick Nielsen for some market system observations ahead of the next real-time insights forum. And transition planning overview with Doug Burse. Sorry, I think you've got a couple of Nick Nielsen points there, might be an error, and followed off by Mike Reid with a MPWG update before closing off. And with that, I will hand over to Nitika.
Good morning, everyone. I am Nitika. I lead the WA capacity and investment team, and I will be just giving you a bit of an update on where we are sitting with some of the activities in the reserve capacity mechanism space. So the certified reserve capacity process for the 26 reserve capacity cycle, which relates to capacity coming online for the 2029 capacity year, that is well underway. I would like to take a minute to thank those who took advantage of the preliminary review process. I hope for those who did that, you did benefit from the feedback that was provided to strengthen your final CRC applications where applicable. As you can appreciate, the team is in the throes of assessing the CRC applications that we've received. We have about a month to complete our assessments, and CRC applicants will be informed of the outcome on the 25th of August. There are certain dates that you need to be aware of, which I have captured in this slide. So please be mindful that there is a tight 2-week window following the CRC assignments from the 25th of August to the 7th of September. During this period, applicants will need to provide reserve capacity security for any new capacity that they have been assigned CRC for. And to give you an idea of what that security is, it is a quarter of the benchmark reserve capacity price, which evaluates to roughly about $122,000 per megawatt. This period is also when all the participants that have been assigned CRC will need to make an intention to trade their capacity bilaterally. It's just an intention to trade, but it is at this point where you actually decide whether you want to make all of the capacity that has been assigned CRC available to the market 2 years down the line, or if you would like to withdraw some of that capacity. I want to iterate that once the trade declaration process is complete, once your reserve capacity security deposit is made, you are actually locked into the process and you will need to make that capacity available 2 years down the line. So your capacity credit assignments come with an obligation of the facilities to be available to meet that reserve capacity obligation 1st of October 2028. And of course, you get paid in return. The CRC process doesn't quite end with the CRC assignments, the trade declarations. There is another important process that follows, which is the network access quantity runs that are undertaken to just ensure that we are actually capturing a realistic output of each of the facilities in the environment, taking into account the network constraints, so to speak. So that will run all through September, and you will get assigned your capacity credits, peak capacity credits, and your flexible capacity credits on the 13th of October. We will also be publishing the capacity credits and the reserve capacity price on the market data site and on the website on the 19th of November, which will mark the closure of the 26 CRC process. In terms of other activities, can we go to the next slide? Thanks, Laura. You've got the reserve capacity testing period, which is also underway. Self-tests conclude on the 31st of July, so you have probably a week to kind of make sure that you take advantage of the self-test process. Following that, if AEMO has not seen evidence of you meeting the capacity credits that were assigned or of your obligations, you will be subjected to a formal reserve capacity testing process. The 30th of September 2026 is what marks the end of this winter testing process. With respect to, I just thought that we'd probably provide a bit of a status update on where our thinking is with regards to the supplementary capacity process for this year, given that we have triggered and procured supplementary capacity over the last 4 years consecutively. This time around, AEMO does not consider that a supplementary capacity will be required for the upcoming summer, the 26-27 hot season, so to speak, and we expect that there is sufficient peak capacity available to meet the anticipated demand for the 26-27 hot season. Of course, we have made this assessment based on the recent forecasts that were published in the 26 WEM Electricity Statement of Opportunities. So at this stage, there is no shortfall that we are expecting, and as such, we will not be triggering supplementary capacity, and as such won't be procuring for it. I think that's my update. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer that.
Thanks, Nitika. There's a question from Ganesh Nandan. Ganesh asks, what's the penalty when a facility awarded CRC for a capacity year is unable to provide capacity due to unforeseen reasons? Is it just that AEMO would draw on the security amount?
I think there are a couple of things. So it depends upon the timing of whether it is a question that the facility is just not going to be there for the entire capacity year. AEMO can actually cancel your capacity credits before the obligations commence if we become aware of it well in advance that this facility is not going to be able to meet its obligations. If the facility is delayed for unforeseen circumstances, then the facility is subject to refunds, and there is a refund payment structure which captures that case. And as Aidan has just mentioned, it could also lead to AEMO taking away that reserve capacity security deposit if the facility cannot meet its reserve capacity obligations for that entire year. So there could be a slight period. It would just depend upon what those circumstances are, the timing of the delay as such. But yeah, and also if you do not pass a test, then you do risk getting your capacity credits reduced. So I've given you quite a few options there, Ganesh, to probably think about. Hopefully that answers your question.
Right, and I'm assuming that thumbs up was from Ganesh. Okay, no further questions. Thank you, Nitika.
Thanks.
Okay, unfortunately, I think we seem to have lost the shared screen. Laura, would you be able to help us out?
Perhaps Laura's dropped off. Aidan, I'm presenting next. Would you like me to just share my screen until Laura comes back?
Thank you very much, Nick.
No problems. Give me one moment while I pull it out. Cool. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Excellent. All right. So, good morning, everyone. Lovely to be here with you today again. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Nicholas Nilsson. I manage the real-time market monitoring team. So we're responsible for the WEM dispatch engine and the real-time market submission system. And what I'm here to talk to you about today is basically some observations from this last quarter over the last on the market outcomes, and in particular, as many of you probably have noted, there have been some quite high prices over that period. So we wanted to share with you some observations about the main drivers for those prices. A lot of what I'm about to share is going to be reflected in the QED as well, but I'm also going to dive in a bit more detail and kind of look on some month-to-month trends as well as year-on-year. So there's a bit more information here than what I'll share in the than what will be in the QED. So to start with, as I mentioned, prices have been quite high. As you can see on this graph on the right, I'll just get my laser pointer going. The graph on the left, you can see prices have been rising steadily since around November time, and in the last couple of months they've hit record highs. As well, when we look at the daily price profile, what we can see is that the prices have really flattened throughout the day, but they've also increased. So in Q2 2026, throughout most of the day, they're sort of sitting at or near where we were in Q2 2025 during the evening peak. So it has been quite a dramatic change, and we certainly acknowledge that. And there's a lot less of a dip in prices through the middle of the day and overnight compared to what we were seeing a year ago. So this is what we've observed over the last quarter. So let's jump into sort of why we're seeing this. Now, first of all, we'll take a look at demand. So in the two solid lines here, you can see the unscheduled operational demand. That represents the demand that excluding the demand that comes from batteries, which AEMO schedules and dispatches. So you can see that the demand has risen slightly, maybe during the morning peak and sort of up till the middle of the day. But apart from that, it remains pretty similar throughout most of the day. And on average over the day, we've really only seen an marginal increase in unscheduled demand, about 28 megawatts year on year. And that sort of reflects the lower minimum temperatures we've been seeing, and that's probably why we're seeing the higher demand in the morning. However, when we look at operational demand, which includes demand from utility scale batteries, what we see is quite different, and we see quite a market increase, especially through the middle of the day and to a lesser extent overnight, in demand through the day. So an average increase of 116 megawatts. And as I'll show on the next slide, that's basically driven by an increase in battery demand. I also wanted to share the sort of month-on-month trend, and what I want to call out in particular is that between April and June, so during the quarter through the course of the quarter, operational demand was increasing as well. And from April to June, it's increased by about 516 megawatts. So we see quite a large increase in the demand through the quarter, as well as year on year when we look at the quarter as a whole. So next we'll take a look at battery demand, and probably to no one's surprise, basically we see an increase in battery demand. So this color here is this year, Q2 compared to Q5 last year. So we see really more than doubling of demand at peak demand year on year, and that's simply driven by the introduction of more batteries between last year and this year, as we've seen we've seen around a gigawatt increase in battery demand. So that's driven an increase in average charging of about 87 megawatts. So that's the big driver behind the operational demand increase. And then when we look on the supply side, we'll start with renewables. And what we've seen with wind is a moderate but impactful decrease in output of about 54 megawatts. And that represents in June, we see a record low monthly wind output. And in April and May, we also have quite low compared to to historical wind output. And I'm just talking about record lows since the start of the new market in October 2023. Now, the reasons for this are twofold. The two main drivers are, first of all, some outages and commissioning going on at Waradaji. So Waradaji wind farm is finalizing an expansion of around 100 megawatts, and so they have been either fully on outage or restricted due to commissioning throughout May and June as a result. Apart from that, we've also seen just lower wind speeds, and that has just resulted in lower wind output from across pretty much all of our wind farms in the system. So really kind of a perfect storm there, which has meant that quite significant decrease in wind throughout the day. I don't have graphs for solar power, but if we did, what we would see was only a very marginal increase in average solar output year on year, about 14 megawatts when we factor in both DPV and grid scale solar. And while that is a decrease, it's worth noting that June in particular, and to a lesser extent April and May, are definitely seasons where we see low solar output, right? June is the lowest solar output month of the year. And if I did have a plot of monthly output, what you would see is that June had close to record low solar output, simply by virtue of being the cloudiest month of the year. So solar relatively unchanged from last year, but what we see is a decrease between April and June, just in line with seasonal effects. Having a look next at coal, we had quite significant outages across multiple facilities, both planned and forced, which drove quite a reduction in coal output year on year, as you can see on the graph on the left. When we look at it a bit more nuanced on the month, we see very low output in April and May. However, we see an increase in June, back up to relatively high levels compared to past months. However, very low levels in April and May. Now, whilst that coal did increase, it's important to remember that in June, we also saw that further increase in operational demand as the temperatures continued to fall. We saw decreases in wind from April, May to June, and we also saw decreases in solar from April, May to June. So what we kind of saw was that coal came back up, but it really still wasn't enough to make up for those other factors. Finally, we take a look at gas, and what we see is an increase in gas demand pretty much throughout the entire day, with the exception of the evening peak. And when we look at a sort of month on month since the new market start, what we see is that the gas output has been at record highs in May and June in particular, but also to a certain extent in April. So year on year on average, we saw an increase in gas power generation of 216 megawatts, which was required to make up for that increase in operational demand and the decrease in coal and wind in particular, which are lower cost resources. So we find that we're replacing these lower cost resources with higher cost gas, and in summary, in essence, that's what's been driving the high costs throughout this quarter. Taking a quick look at outages in a more general sense, what we see that outage rates were higher overall in 2026 versus 2025, as the average we see higher rates in 2026 than 2025, but we also see that those outages are impacting those lower cost coal and to a lesser extent wind outages as well. So while coal outages decreased 390, and we also see that while coal outages decreased by 392 megawatts from May to June, as we kind of saw a couple of slides ago, that wasn't enough to make up for the decreases in wind output and the increase in operational demand. It's also worth noting that although we aren't really seeing as many wind outages in June as we did in May, and these large outages in May are driven by the Waradaji expansion. The Waradaji facility was still on commissioning in June, so its output was still quite limited, although that's not necessarily reflected in the outage rates per se. So, in summary, unscheduled demand has not changed significantly between 2025 to 2026. However, the increase in quantities of grid-scale BESS has resulted in higher operational demand, especially around midday and overnight. Whereas on the other hand, the decreasing availability of lower cost coal and wind has played in the other opposite direction. So we've needed an increased amount of gas generation to make up for that. And gas being a higher cost fuel source has driven prices up. We also saw that pattern within the quarter, that although we saw coal returning in June, we also saw wind and solar decreasing and demand increasing in June, which has meant that increase in coal has not been effective at reducing prices even in June. As a bit of an outlook looking forward, like I said, or as we saw, coal generation largely returned to full availability in June. However, we do expect further outages later in the year. We see 200 megawatts of planned outages between August and November. Renewable generation, we should see an increase, partly as Waradaji completes its commissioning and returns from that outage, and also as wind and solar return from seasonal lows and perhaps in the case of wind, unusually low wind. However, we may also see battery demand increasing because we have a couple of new battery facilities that are sort of finalizing their preparations for commercial operation, and we see them entering the market over the next half a year or so. And obviously looking at seasons, we expect to see a decrease in demand for spring, but of course after that we have summer. So it's very difficult, obviously, to say exactly what will happen with prices. We see pressures in both directions in that list, but I can say that when we look at July, we see only a marginal increase compared to June. So that rapid increase that we were seeing month to month coming up to June is at least slowing down. In the longer term, and this is very much aligned with what we've said in our ISU, we definitely require more generation capacity in order to meet expected demand growth and the upcoming retirement of thermal generation, most notably Collie power plant next year and the Muja D units in October 2029. And that need for additional energy is both low-cost renewable energy that we can use to fill our batteries so that the batteries can firm, but it also means more gas for backing, perhaps in the longer term. And while the battery capacity that we have at the moment is enough to firm the renewables that we have at the moment, in the longer term, as we see more renewables, we're going to need more battery storage. And as we see more percentage of renewables running our system sort of on a typical basis, we're also going to need increased battery capabilities. So for example, grid forming capabilities, synthetic inertia, in order to maintain system security in that kind of environment. That is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take a couple of questions, but I think this is also a very nice segue into the next presentation.
Thanks for that, Nick. There's a couple of things in the chat. So the first from Glenn Neal is a request just for future, whether we can see more on wind and solar outputs in future sessions.
Yep.
So I'll take that as a request.
We could take that as a request.
Yeah,
Glenn,
just a request.
Yeah.
So the wind was great. I mean, I guess I didn't type that correctly. It was more just getting the same view on solar, which you spoke to, but more getting the chart up there.
Absolutely. I'll see what I can. I'll see if it's possible to share it later in this session as well. But yeah, absolutely. I also recommend that you have a look at the WEM Real-Time Insights Forum. If you just search on Google AEMO WEM Real-Time Insights Forum, you'll see there. And that's also another forum we have where I think which is very well suited to sharing this kind of information in more detail.
Great, thanks.
Right. Thanks for that, Nick, and thanks for that, Glenn. We might round back on that later on in this session if Nick can have that to hand. The second one comes from Cameron. Cameron asks what the main reasons were for increasing unscheduled operational demand and operational demand, i.e. demand side factors. So you did say in your presentation that there wasn't a great deal of difference between 2025 and 2026 in terms of UOD.
That's right. So in terms of unscheduled operational demand, it didn't increase very much from 2025 to 2026, to the extent that we did see a small increase year on year. We think that's because we've seen slightly colder mornings in 2026 compared to 2025. And if we look month on month between April to June, it's simply a case of June is colder than April. So as the temperatures decreased, we see higher unscheduled operational demand in the month. And when it comes to operational demand, which includes batteries, the reason for the increase year on year is simply because there are more grid scale batteries in the market now, and they all need to withdraw at least to a certain extent. So there's more demand coming from them. And again, month to month, probably what we're seeing is just mainly the influence of temperature on unscheduled operational demand. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thanks for that, Nick. And we've got a thumbs up. Great.
Pleasure. Right. Thank you.
Well, with that, we'll move on. And Douglas Burse, you're next. Were you able to share? Brilliant.
Right, we can see the screen. We can hear me and see me, Aidan. Are we good to go?
I can hear and see you.
Okay, awesome. I have the pleasure of speaking to you for the next, 15 minutes. I'll maybe squeeze it to 20 if Aidan allows. But we're going to I'm viewing this as a soft launch of what we're calling transition planning. It's essentially a package of work that we're delivering about preparing for the energy transition. And I apologize now, but I'm going to say the word risk at least 172 times over the next 15 minutes. A lot of this comes down to the risk that's posed through the energy transition. So I'm Douglas Burse. If you don't know me, I'm the manager of the WA Future System Engineering team. We're essentially looking at the future risk profile of AEMO as the operator of the power system and the market in the Swiss, and seeing where we need to invest our effort. So we're putting a lot of time into making sure and really begin delivering on the work that needs to get done to prepare for the change that's coming our way. So the energy transition is progressing rapidly, right? It's here, it's now, and it's coming regardless of what we do. We're going to see fundamental change in the power system that we're operating on a day-to-day basis. So transition planning is the structured approach in which we as AEMO are taking. And AEMO has the unique perspective of being the market and system operator here. It's really, we're left with the system to operate, so we want to make sure we're investing in the right way at the right time to prepare for the change that's coming. So what we're doing is we're assessing the risk trajectory of the Swiss, we're collaborating with industry on potential solutions and delivering on strategic initiatives to prepare for change. There's a lot of structure that we're putting in place such that we focus on what matters most and what's going to deliver the best outcomes for us as the operator and inevitably consumers that are the end users of our product of electricity. So transition planning. The energy transition itself is characterized by the shift from thermal synchronous generation to inverter-based intermittent generation and storage supported by gas. What that simply means is we have an increasing level of uncertainty in managing the power system. Whereas we used to have coal facilities and gas facilities that would run consistently 24/7, now we've got the complexity of DER, moving energy around through the day through DPV. We've got residential battery uptake that's fundamentally changing the energy profile that we're operating to. In addition to that, we've got increasingly driven by inverter-based generation. So by that, I'm meaning the wind and solar facilities that are connected to the grid, those large utility scale facilities. We're well progressed in this journey, but we're approaching critical points such as major facility retirements. Like the change is happening, the change is here, but we're hitting points in time when we need to fundamentally change that our approaches to operating the power system. So we're moving from a certain world or a relatively certain world to an increasingly uncertain world. And what transition planning is there to do is to kind of cut through the uncertainty and direct effort appropriately in really targeted investments. Power system operating envelope is being stretched where we're operating far outside of where we would have expected to 10 years ago. Some of those design principles that we've held for decades in power system operations no longer hold true or no longer fit for purpose in what we're operating. So transitional planning is what we're trying to put in place to manage that change. requires a highly collaborative approach from ourselves and with industry, and we're trying to provide that element of transparency today in terms of what we're doing and why we believe that's important. Now, in putting this together, this is quite a complex figure, right? This is us trying to explain what does the future facility mix look like for AEMO. And this is a snapshot at a point in time in terms of where we think the facility mix is going. Again, it's uncertain. We're not sure what's going to happen, but as of today, and in terms of what we published recently in the WEMISU, this is our best estimate of what the future looks like. 3 colors in terms of that figure, and they're stacked up in megawatts, and time progresses from left to right, from 26 to 33. Those we have a decreasing quantity of thermal generation, thermal synchronous generation, which is the black area. What is in a solid color is existing generation. What is slightly faded is committed. We believe that's going to come online. They've already been assigned capacity credits, and what is in a lighter color is the kind of faded, and the purple and the yellow there is what we're anticipating to come online. Relatively high level of certainty those facilities will come online. But we're seeing a reduction in synchronous generation, an increasing quantity of renewables, which is intermittent and uncertain that it's going to produce, and an increasing level of storage. The mix is changing. Decreasing level of synchronous is going to pose challenges to us in terms of how we assess reliability. We're expecting to be doubling roughly the capacity, the nameplate capacity of renewable generation over the next 4 years. And by 2033, we're expecting around about 75% of installed capacity to be renewables or storage. It's not something you can just turn on and guarantee that it's there. You've got that decreased level of certainty. It's uncertainty and risk that the transition planning effort is here to manage. Something that we lean on quite heavily in our transition planning approach is transition points. Not every event that's going to occur over the next 10 to 20 years is going to be critical and change fundamentally the power system that we operate, but some of them are. And we think it's really important to use transition points as a really effective way to communicate and coordinate timing of initiatives that we're delivering as an organization. So transition points are events or thresholds that have material impact to power system operations, operation risk, or require significant industry collaboration. The timing and the assumptions here are aligned with the 2026 ESU. They're a snapshot in time, and they can obviously change. But this is how we're approaching the planning of our works today. So the currently defined ones are Collie Power Station retiring on the 1st of October 27. That's what, 15, 16 months away. Clean Energy Link North, it's a massive transmission project that Western Power are delivering. Is expected to be completed by the 1st of January 2028. The VPP participation, and those that have read the WEM ESU will see that we've accounted for 200 megawatt reduction in the reserve capacity requirement, or thereabouts, for the 2028-29 capacity year. We need to be prepared to operate that power system that has such a significant portion of energy coming or being moved by a VPP, and that's coming in 2028 for the hot season there. We've then got Muja D retirement in October 29, and an assumed unavailability of Blue Water's coal units in 1st of October 2031. A lot of uncertainty around that final one in terms of when the retirement will occur, because it's a mix of the availability of the coal itself and the capability of the facilities to continue operating. We don't have control over when these events will occur, but we want to prepare best for these points in time. So as of today, these are a set that we believe are going to change the way we operate or require that level of industry collaboration. But they're not a complete and exhaustive list. We're adding to this over time, but trying not to say that everything is at a transition point. Only so many events can be monitored and managed in this sort of way. So this is the approach we're taking internally, and it's trying to put that really structured approach to it and limit what we take down to the point of delivery and taking actions. The starting point all comes down to risk. We think that's a really strong position to land from, particularly as AEMO being the system and market operator. And it's looking at what is the risk today. So where's the risk profile today, and what does the trajectory of that risk look like over the coming 10 years? The combination of those, informed by a set of screening studies, being engineering studies that our team are carrying out, are what tells us the risk identification portion of what we're doing. We then go through a point of prioritization. So which of those risks are big enough that we should actually look at designing some solutions for? Which of those risks do we believe we really need to focus on manage? Some of those risks we won't be investing in because we only have a limited amount of time and investment in effort across the energy industry. But that's the reality of the situation, and what we're trying to do here is really focus on where we can make the biggest difference, where we can move the needle on the risk that we operate with. We then go through a process of mitigation design, and that's looking at a different range of options, be it engineering studies, be it regulatory reform recommendations, operational tool investments. There could be a procurement process that we want to lead through a system restart service contract. And then we prioritize which of those mitigations are both going to move the dial on risk, but also have a high likelihood of success. We don't want to progress something that's got a really high potential benefit, but really low likelihood of success. And likewise, where we want to make sure we see the benefit on the risk itself as well. What we then do is we take it to the point that we're committing to the delivery of an initiative. We say, look, this is an initiative we believe is going to really benefit the power system, it's going to benefit industry, and we focus and deliver those high value initiatives. We want to limit that pool of work as much as possible so we can focus effort where it is. So that first step is risk identification. It's all about risk. So what we've got are a set of transition events. They're the events that will occur, be it retirements, new facilities, network augmentations, thresholds that we reach in DER. DER is a constantly evolving change. It's not a point in time. Solar panels are installed every day. Residential batteries are installed every day. So thresholds that you hit. We then combine that with an assessment structured around a set of power system security and reliability risk factors. That's system strength, frequency and inertia, voltage control, transient and oscillatory stability, operability, which is the complexity that we have to operate within to manage the power system, resource adequacy and system restart. There's quite a wide range that we're assessing under this, but there's a structure assessment that we carry out on these pieces, and where the combination of an event and that assessment of risk under one of those factors is identified. That's where we view that as a further assessment is required. It's the combination of event and risk factor. There's some uncertainty in terms of when those events will occur, but we need a starting point to work to. We need a starting point that we can work around as an industry to invest effort and change the way that we operate or invest in tools. Like I was saying, it's the mitigation design that comes next. So what I'll do is I'll try and take us through an example and see if it can kind of land as something real. Just now, that's just the framework that we're operating to, but I want to give you an example of where we're investing effort. And I'll try and keep the balance between technical and making it simple to consume. So the example we think is quite useful to explain is frequency and inertia. So inertia being the service provided by spinning mass on thermal generators. They're synchronized to the power system. So when there is a change in frequency, the inertia response means that frequency change is limited in the rate. So thermal generation facilities, synchronous facilities, provide inertia inherently. But as they retire and energy needs are served by renewables backed by storage, we're going to have less inertia provided by facilities on the power system. This poses a potential risk to power system operations. Lower levels of inertia increase the rate of change of frequency under a contingency event. A contingency event in this case, we're referring to the loss of generation. That's the example we're looking at here. Now, when that rate of change of frequency is very high, there's a risk that facilities or network equipment disconnects, and that can result in cascading failure. So multiple loss of generation under a single event. So what the example is on that figure here, and I'll try and hopefully explain this, is event occurs and our frequency normally sits at 50 Hertz. And when that event occurs that you lose generation, the frequency drops. Now, depending on the level of inertia on the system, the three examples here are from blue to orange to green, and increasing levels of inertia on the power system. The rate of change of frequency in those initial fractions of a second decreases. So if you don't have sufficient inertia on the system, that rate of change of frequency is very high. such that you risk losing network equipment or a facility. Now, our current market systems are highly effective at managing this risk. Our dispatch engine will co-optimize and limit the risk through a contingency event. It will limit facility generation such that it doesn't pose a risk to a contingency event. However, constantly curtailing facilities to manage the risk of a rate of change of frequency event results in an inefficiency. And there's a point at which that becomes unacceptable. So what we want to do here is make sure that we have an understanding of when that's going to occur, and that we're going to be curtailing facilities too much or to too great an extent, such that we should invest in a solution. It's quite hard to quantify when this will change, but there's quite a clear trend that we've observed. Now, two different ways you can look at the risk profile is looking at leading indicators. That's kind of looking at the history of something, or looking at future trends. Now, when I was pulling this together, I was pretty surprised by what we see. And this figure here in the middle is the one that I think is probably the most drastic and kind of aligns with some of what Nicholas was showing us earlier. Looking at the Q2 average facility inertia provided on the power system, and that can kind of be viewed as analogous to the number of thermal facilities running at a point in time. We've seen a real decrease in facility inertia provided, particularly over that evening peak. So in those hours between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. Looking at 23 and 24, the trend's reasonably similar. The facility inertia being measured in megawatt seconds on the y-axis, hour of the day on the x-axis, we've seen a real drastic reduction in that provided inertia from facilities in the evening peak, such that it's around about a 25% reduction moving into 2026. Now, what we believe that's because is battery facilities are shifting energy from the middle of the day to the evening, such that you don't need to commit as many units in the evening to provide inertia. That change is rapid. Like 3 years and a reduction of 25% of the facility inertia is really quite a drastic shift in the power system we're operating with. One thing we wanted to test in terms of confirming this isn't just a concept that demand is decreasing, and Nick's demonstrated that's not necessarily the case. But if you look at the figure to the left here, and facility inertia on the y-axis, operational demand on the x-axis, and the colored dots there are colored by the date. So June 24 to July 26 by the color, you can see that for an equivalent demand, the dots are grouping lower and lower as the colors change from blue to yellow. What that indicates is as time has progressed, we're seeing a lower level of facility inertia for equivalent levels of demand. That means now we're serving demand with less facility inertia, which is either coming from renewable generation, or it's because the battery storage is changing the dynamic of facilities that are participating and running on the power system. That's only given us the historical trend. We want to look forwards and see when this is likely to bind and when we're going to see significant shifts in the available inertia as well. We haven't to date seen significant drop-offs in the available dispatchable inertia. We've seen some facilities retire, but we're going to see some really significant changes as we progress forwards. So looking from 2026 to 2033, the trend's clear. As facilities retire, synchronous facilities retire, we're just going to have less inertia available to us. There's less tools at play for us to manage rate of change of frequency risk. So what that means is we need to look at some way to manage that risk, both from a power system operations, but also in terms of market inefficiency that does interact with that. So the next point we go to is mitigation design. We've got a risk. Decreasing levels of facility inertia pose a power system risk and commercial risk to large facilities due to curtailment. If you don't have enough inertia on the power system, we're going to have to limit facilities' megawatt output such that we don't risk too great a contingency event occurring. A few options that we could look at here. This isn't a complete list of options, but you can either look at it in terms of the Rockoff safe limit. That's the allowable maximum rate of change of frequency. This was recently reviewed. It's relatively short to implement a change, but it's not a long-term solution. So the fact that we have reviewed this recently and that it's not a long-term solution, we don't think this is the big strategic initiative we should look at. It's an option, but it's a band-aid solution and something that we should look at, but we need to look at big fundamental changes to how we operate the power system here if we're going to prepare ourselves to be operating this fundamentally different power system of the future. So the second option we've looked at is alternative solutions to providing adequate inertia. So inertia as a concept is about physical inertia, but are there other ways that you can provide this? This is a long-term strategic solution. It requires significant cross-industry collaboration. It's something I'm really excited about, the work that we're doing in this place, and we're moving this into the delivery portion of what we're doing at AEMO, and we're calling it the synthetic inertia pre-operational deployment. That's a massive mouthful, and I curse our team for calling it that on a daily basis, but there we are. That's what we're trying to deliver. We're looking at synthetic inertia, and I'll come on to what that means as a solution to this power system risk and potential commercial risk to facilities operating. This is an image that we're trying to kind of look at the grid forming capability and simplify what it looks like. So grid forming inverters are an emerging technology, and they allow different capability from grid following inverters that are the ones that are currently installed on the Swiss. Relatively new technology, really exciting capability. There's two axes that we kind of look at here. What's the complexity and uncertainty in the ability for the facility to provide a service, and what's the urgency to us on the Swiss? So in terms of complexity and uncertainty, you've got a lot of complex capability, protection quality fault current, system restart or islanded operation. They're being investigated through NEM Type 2 transitional service trials, and we're leveraging the expertise of our colleagues on the East Coast to learn a lot about that. Quite complex, challenging to assess, but they're not particularly urgent for us in Western Australia. We've got a pretty good system restart plan in place. We believe that we've got a while before that's urgent for us in Western Australia. What we have a higher urgency for is synthetic inertia and voltage waveform stability. But you've got a balance of complexity and uncertainty there. We believe that synthetic inertia is a really critical stepping stone for us to demonstrate the capability of grid forming facilities, to test the commissioning process associated with it, to be able to deploy this technology on the power system. And then we can step up and leverage the capability of those facilities to provide voltage waveform stability. Much more complex, much more uncertain about the capability, but synthetic inertia has been demonstrated. It's not. Trials have demonstrated the capability of batteries to provide synthetic inertia, for them to respond as if they were a physical spinning machine. So rather than gas turbine spinning, coal facilities spinning, batteries can provide an equivalent response. The trials have demonstrated that. It's out there, it's real. And now we've got the point of taking that capability and operating a power system with it in place. It's incredibly exciting that we're on this path. I think it's relatively groundbreaking. We've got an inertia market that facilities can participate in Western Australia, and I think this is a really good opportunity for us to show leadership globally in terms of what we can do in this space. We at AEMO believe this initiative is into deployment of grid forming capability to provide synthetic inertia is a no regrets option. We believe we should progress it as quickly as we can. It doesn't resolve all the risks on the power system, the retirement of synchronous machines, but it's a great opportunity for us to do something now to benefit ourselves in the future. It's relatively low cost, it's relatively low risk, the capability has been demonstrated. This is about deploying it and integrating it into the way we operate the power system. The current frameworks can support this. It strategically sets us up in a place where we can potentially have a power system that's far more reliant on grid forming capability rather than synchronous capability. We believe this is just so fundamentally critical to the power system that we're going to be operating on the Swiss, and we should move now and move fast to get this done. And we're looking for support from industry, from our stakeholders across industry. We're working with EPWA on this, and we're working with Western Power on this together. It's a really important piece of work for us, and look, I'm incredibly excited about what's going on in this space, and I'm sure you're going to hear more about it in the coming months. So kind of coming back to the beginning, the energy transition is here. It's progressing rapidly. we're really focused on ourselves as AEMO as the market and system operator. We have to operate this power system. So what we care about is that risk trajectory of the Swiss that we're operating. We're looking to collaborate with the industry on potential solutions, and then delivering on a really limited set of strategic initiatives to prepare for change. We want to be proactive in the space, not reactive. There's my pitch. I hope I've not taken up too much time, Aidan, but like I'm so excited about what we're doing in this space.
That's fantastic, Doug. Thank you for that. And actually, you've answered a lot of the questions that were asked along the way as well, which is great. So just going to those right now in order. So another question from Ganesh, which I think you actually have partially answered, at least as part of that deep dive on synthetic inertia. Ganesh asks what future energy systems could practically and reliably replace coal, which has been the fallback option for baseload generation in the past. So synthetic inertia is obviously part of it. Do you want to talk to any other aspects?
Sorry, so this is the question from Ganesh?
Yeah. So what future energy systems could practically and reliably replace coal?
So like we need a mix, right? It's challenging, and to some extent we're doing our best to be able to operate with what we're given. We're going to be operating a power system that is renewables, it's gas, and it's backed by gas and storage. That's where we're going towards. Now, there's kind of two different aspects to that. One is the reliability aspect, which is the pure energy component. And that's going to rely on us having a really strong understanding of what the forecast looks like in terms of the generation capability, making sure we're managing storage effectively. And the second aspect of that is the security component, and that's the ESS component there, essential system services, and that's where Rockoff comes into the mix. We currently view the rate of change of frequency service, the inertia service, as the one which is the most challenging to replace. The other essential system services are effectively provided already by grid following batteries. There's such a surplus of supply of those services. And we believe that the conversion of grid following batteries to grid forming, or the introduction of new facilities that are grid forming batteries, would be able to provide that inertia service to us, equivalent to a battery that is equivalent to a spinning machine. We believe that there is a capability there from the ESS component. System strength and oscillatory stability is a much more complex question, and something we'll hopefully come back in future forums to discuss. Hopefully I got somewhere close.
Yep, no, that's brilliant. Thank you for that, Doug. So that segues nicely into a question from Max Collins. Max actually asks how grid forming services from storage will be procured in the future. So you've talked a little bit about the Rockoff service.
In terms of procurement, like if the end state potentially here is that grid forming batteries can provide inertia and they can be integrated into our market systems in the same way that the other inertia is. Exactly how that goes ahead is a piece of work that we need to work with EPWA, and we need to work with Western Power on how that is done. So the grid forming service we're currently looking at primarily is that synthetic inertia service, and we believe that could be introduced into our dispatch engine such that it's co-optimized in the same way with our other essential system services and energy. Now we procure that through our market systems, through our WEM dispatch engine is the kind of final state we see. Now this is not something that's going to be going on in 6 months, right? This is a vision for years in the future, but it's something that we're certainly looking at. The other capability of grid forming inverters, again, that's the really challenging question about what you need in terms of system strength, the oscillatory stability component, and I kind of recommend that you keep an ear out for what's going on in the kind of PSSR review space, and I think that's going to be the indication of where the future of that goes.
Thanks for that, Doug. Yeah, I think the message there was to stay tuned, and you'll likely hear a bit more about this at the next WA ECF. Next question was from Wayne Trumbull. So you've spoken a little bit about methodology in terms of transition points. Wayne asks, what is the risk and mitigation if Cell North isn't completed as scheduled and Collie closes in late 2027?
That's a really tricky question, Wayne. But I'd expect
That's the
nothing
work,
less.
isn't it?
That's the work, right? It's something that we're looking at. We actually believe in terms of base reliability, we're in a pretty decent space. Collie retiring, we've got facilities coming in, we've got a lot of batteries coming in, and we've got some hybrid facilities in the mix as well. Baseline reliability, we think, is in a really good place in terms of raw access to megawatt hours. The challenge with Cell North that we see coming is the level of collaboration required between ourselves and Western Power and market participants in managing a lot of those outages associated with Cell North, because we need to get the timing right, we need to get the delivery right, such that we don't cause intermittent reliability risks. The baseline is looking reasonably good, but it's that delivery that's challenging. It's making sure that we don't pose any unnecessary risk to reliability of the network through those through the delivery of the transmission, essentially. So I'd say it's more about that we really need to make sure we're working together as a team, and I can confidently say from my side, I think we're in a good place with our planning team working closely with Western Power. But the baseline looks good. It's just important that we focus on delivery and don't pose unnecessary risk to ourselves in operations.
Great, thanks for that, Doug. Another one from Wayne. Wayne asks what the Collie and Muja contribution in megawatt hours annually has been. No need to answer that right now, Doug. Don't see that figure close to hand. Wayne, we'll send you an email with that information, but you'll be happy to know that as of, I think, next week, you'll be able to access that information yourself in downloadable CSV file form from AEMO's website. So no more JSON files for that. All right. The next question is from Nicholas. Nicholas, whose half of their last name has been cut off. I'm apologising. So Nicholas asks, what does AEMO see as being the optimal level of battery capacity as a percentage of the total capacity mix? When does AEMO start forecasting that extra battery capacity will result in diminishing returns to the market? So I might just answer that partially by saying that AEMO doesn't determine a optimal mix as part of its planning activities. That's the reason why we have a market. And just also point you to the most recently released 2026 WEM ESU, part of which is to determine the duration obligation for battery storage on a rolling year-by-year basis, the result of which actually means that there's a price signal for battery storage. The more battery storage there is on the system, the less the new battery storage gets remunerated through the reserve capacity mechanism. So there's actually a price signal there to optimize the amount of storage on the network. And the next question,
I think, Aidan, can I add one comment to that? I agree with everything. Like, it's not about the optimal point. I think from the transition planning perspective, what we're interested in is when does the complexity in managing that storage and managing the movement of energy pose a significant challenge to AEMO? That's the way we're approaching it. It's as you have storage and intermittent resources, it's the combination of those two that changes the way you operate. So we need to upskill our controller and put tools in their hands such that they can manage the risk on reliability from the uncertainty that gets added into the mix. So it's not so much about the optimal level from an efficiency perspective, it's when does the proportion of storage reach a point such that we need to be more prepared to take early action to avoid a reliability risk in the coming hours or even days.
Yeah, I think that's a good point throughout the transition planning content, Doug, is that there's a bunch of tools in the toolbox and it's not just going to be any single technology that does the job. Next question's from Ganesh again. So Ganesh has asked a question. He's asking, what is the high-level estimate of additional rapid rock-off services that will be required to compensate grid inertia when Blue Waters and Muja retire around 2030, and how will this affect ESS charges? So again, this sounds very much like it's part of the work around the transition points. I don't know if you want to speak to that any further, Doug.
No, this is what we're looking at, right? Is how do you replace what they currently provide in inertia, in physical inertia? Do we need to replace up to the same level that they provide today, and trying to quantify how much of that could be replaced by synthetic inertia. I can't answer it completely. I think it's in the region of about 1,000 megawatt seconds, if that's a meaningful number to you, that each coal unit provides. Very ballpark numbers there. But we'd need to replace it with something in terms of managing that that contingency risk, or not introducing significant inefficiency to those market outcomes. So it's discussions I was having earlier today with the team. Is how much do we actually need to replace that in the future? And it's quite challenging for us to say, what could a 100 megawatt grid forming battery provide? Or grid forming battery provide. I can't say with certainty today, but that's the challenge we've got posed to us. That's the work.
Right. And a follow-up question from Kobe Terrell. Kobe asks when we could realistically expect synthetic inertia to enter the market.
I'd love to be able to answer that today. I would love to be able to sit here and say, I guarantee by the 7th of September 2029 it will be in place, but I don't know. That's one of the pieces where we're working on. We've decided that we've got a commitment as an organization that we want to focus in on this as a strategic initiative. And part of what we're doing is now working through what that project looks like all the way to the end for synthetic inertia entering the market, if that end state is capable. We're not saying it definitely is just now, but we're putting the pieces in place such that that is an end state that we could work towards. So hopefully, Aidan, we can come to this group and give a bit of an insight into where we'll be in 2031, because that's when we're expecting to see those large scale retirements really bind. So if it's not synthetic inertia, it's something else.
Great. Thanks, Doug. And look, a final question in this section, then we might move on from Cheng Zhu. Cheng asks, do you see a pathway for the grid to reach full carbon neutral? I don't expect you to answer that question, Doug, but I would perhaps point Chen towards the future energy system outlook that's just been kicked off by Energy Policy WA as a process that does look at that longer term pathway between here and the nation's emissions reduction goals.
I think that's. Can I add one comment, Aidan,
Yeah.
before we close out? I'd kind of view our role here is we're working with the government to kind of reach their what they're trying to deliver in terms of the energy transition, right? We are a function of enabling that change. So what we're trying to do here is find initiatives such that we can support the change that's required and deliver on those. It's about being proactive, not reactive. So we're doing what we can to support it. There's a bunch of brilliant engineers in this organization and in this industry, and although we can't say if that's the end state that we end up in, and that's what the FISU, one of the above,
yeah,
is going to be providing that outlook for. We are here to support that transition to the best of our ability.
Absolutely.
And thank you all so much. I'm massively excited by this work we're doing. I'm loving the response. So I'm gonna leave it to someone else. But thank you all for your attention today. Really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Doug. And finally, there was a question from Max Cavella around financial compensation for synthetic inertia, and I'd just refer Max to the previous responses on the existing ROC-off services, and also looking to the power system security and reliability review as well in terms of future market outcomes. And for the next item, we've got Nick Nielsen back to talk about the real-time market insights forum.
Thanks, Aidan. Just very quickly, before I do that, I just want to address one of the questions that we asked were asked earlier from, I think it was Glenn, and you asked whether we could share the same graph on the right-hand side here, but for solar. So I've just gone quickly pulled that together while Doug was talking. So we've shared that in the slides. I won't speak too much to them now. Basically, what you can see is that June is typically one of the seasonal lows, and that the June 2026 was quite low compared to previous months. So that'll be in the pack that we publish. So just to try and address that question. Jumping.
Thank you.
No worries. So just jumping forward through Doug's slides. Yep. So the Real-Time Insights Forum is a forum that that AEMO runs once a quarter, where we dive into a little bit more technical detail about what's been going on in the market, in the system, and also things that are coming up. So it's a great opportunity to come along and learn more, and also to ask maybe more involved questions than what you get to ask in the WACF. So the next one is coming up on the 11th of August, 2 p.m. Australian Western Standard Time. It's fully virtual. If you want to join, you can send an email to waelectricityforum@aemo.com.au. If you have any questions or requests, either now or after the forum, you can send that to wa.rtm@aemo.com.au, which is the real-time market monitoring team. Our planned agenda for this quarter is to go through an overview of the QED, talk a little bit about the upcoming WEMD release in September and what you can expect to see in there. A little bit of look forward at spring operational readiness for 2026, and finally a few quick notes on market data, some market data site improvements that we're currently publishing or deploying, and some external API URL changes. That's it from me. Just a very quick note. Thank you.
Right, and next cab off the rank is Mike Reid with a update on the Major Projects Working Group. Over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Aidan. Hi, everyone. So, yeah, for those that don't know me, Mike Reid, manager of the market readiness function here at AEMO. And just a very quick run through of what we've been looking at Major Projects Working Group and what's coming up. So we last met late May, and the main items of business there were the third iteration of the WEM implementation roadmap. So that's the first time we've revised the roadmap in line with the annual capital allocation process that we do on a rolling basis at AEMO. So there was a slew of additional projects that were added into the roadmap. You can find that for those that are interested on the website. Once you get the slide deck, you'll see the link in the slide if you'd like to take a look at that latest version or any of the previous versions of the roadmap. And we also briefed MPWG on 3 implementation assessments covering the ST Parser project. So that's an upgrade to the system that's used for generating ST Parser reports and studies, operational forecasting improvements, so that's covering a range of enhancements to the systems and processes we use for the forecasts that underpin dispatch, and the WEM Public Data Uplift project, which is the project delivering some of the changes that were referenced earlier in today's meeting. The public data site improvements with the CSV files and the replacement of the WEM data dashboard. And so those 3 implementation assessments have all been updated on the website, so they've been published in both draft and final form. There again, you'll find the link in the slides. Coming up at the next meeting, which will be the end of next month, we've got to go through a couple of implementation assessments on digital environments uplift. That project's going to upgrade the environments that we have and add a couple more. There'll be a piece of work to upgrade the pre-production environment that we use to make the testing that we perform in it more realistic and more reliable, and a separation of the pre-production environment that market participants use for their testing. And the MT Parser project is a piece of work to upgrade the tool set for producing MT Parser reports so that we can cover off on some of the sort of emerging phenomena that we need to be able to model and make sure that we're better managing those longer term risks. And at the same meeting, we'll also present the results of the member survey and the proposals that we've got for making some ongoing improvements there. And I'll just leave you with the fact that later in the second half of this year, we'll be releasing implementation assessments on wide area monitoring and the peak IRCR project. Right, I think that's all I have for you about Major Projects Working Group. Any questions in the Q&A for me, Aidan?
No questions, Mike. I'd just like to call attention again to the AEMO website, which has got extremely comprehensive information regarding the Major Projects Working Group, including the implementation assessments and further information on the reform roadmap as well. So a lot of information there. Please do access it. If you've got any questions, obviously you can email that there. Also, just want to call attention and say thank you to stakeholders who participated in a survey that we conducted a while back in that subsequently informed the public data uplift project, and then more recently a couple of workshops that we've held with stakeholders. So thank you very much for those who participated. Your input's been extremely valuable and useful as part of that project. All right, I'm not seeing any further questions in the chat, Mike, in relation to the MPWG or anything else. So in the absence of questions, I'll just call attention to the upcoming forums. So like Nick said, we've got the Real-Time Market Insights Forum coming up on the 11th of August, and next DR Market Participation Forum with updates on Project Jupiter in particular on the 19th of August. The MPWG, as Mike said, on 27th of August, and our next scheduled WA ECF towards the end of September. So please, like I said, if there's any feedback that you want to provide on regarding our forums, content, further questions, please don't hesitate to email us on that address there on the screen. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.